Cause I can bust you like a question mark block. Like a Pikachu, I'll treat you to the school of hard shocks. Sharp blades like imperial rage, burn hot, explodes plots, cut holes in eye sockets. Walk in apocalypse, I often go off and get off. What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from the place with the magic things down there. Today I've got something that apparently every single one of you wants. I've heard it over and over. This is sort of the end of the aggro cycle. This is mono white soldiers, and this, I mean, it is a really good deck, but I didn't realize there was so much interest in this thing. Apparently there is, though, and it's really fun to play. So I'm gonna let you know about it right now-ish, because you know. We're gonna do it, let's go! Well, we start with the creatures, and that's the right place to start, the Soldiers deck. And what better place to start than this guy? This is 3 copies of Kytheon, or Gideon. Break me off a piece of that Kytheon. Kytheon is pretty stinking awesome. We can flip him pretty early in this deck. And even if you play a late game just as Kytheon, you know, he's still pretty good. The indestructibility is nice to have. A pretty good top deck. And even on top decks, he'll often flip the next turn. So do end up liking Kytheon. Once he flips, he's fantastic. Saves our dudes from, you know, sweepers, mass removal, and things. Except for languish. And his turning into a basically 4/4, like, more or less indestructible guy. It doesn't take damage. It's not indestructible, but still. That's also very, very good. He's one of the biggest creatures in the deck when he does that. So, all in all, very, very good card here. In the 1-drop slot, we're also playing 4 copies of Soldier of the Pantheon, for reasons. I mean, I really don't see any other really, really good 1-drop soldiers that I want to play. And Soldier is our other best option from Kytheon. So we're doing that. We'll get a little bit of value off of him every now and again, but for the most part, he's a 1-drop 2/1, and we need that in this, especially to help flip Kytheon a little earlier. On to the 2-drops, we got more of those than anything else in the entire deck. We got 3 copies of Anafenza right here. Anafenza, fantastic in this deck. One of the things that helps you go long and get you, you know, 4/4s and 5/5s even sometimes off of Anafenza if she stays out. Very, very, very good creature for this deck, especially if you want to go long, which we have that ability over a lot of the other aggro decks in the format to go slightly long. And Anafenza really contributes to our ability to do that. So I really like the card. 3 copies of Topan Freeblade in this deck. Probably one of the more flexible slots, although this is the other Soldier 2-drop that I like a whole lot. It's very, very budget, and it's very, very effective. Can be a 2-mana 3/3 a lot of the time. With the Vigilance, that's just gravy. This is 4 copies of Consul's Lieutenant. Consul's Lieutenant is crazy. The first strike is actually way better than you might think. Allows it to attack into and block like Goblin Rabblemaster and Pile Driver without dying. That's pretty cool, no matter how big they get on attacks. So that's pretty cool. Allows us to attack into a lot of what Elves is doing, other than, you know, whining. Shaman of the Pack fights it and wins, you know, and survives. So it really helps us out just with its base stats. When it goes Renown, it's really crazy. I mean, effectively a 2-mana 3/2 first strike is already crazy, and then helps out all of our dudes on the swing. Absolutely invaluable creature. We have to play 4 copies of it. 3 copies of Brimaz, no really necessary explanation. We have to play 3-drops. Definitely want to curve into Brimaz whenever possible. There are other times where on the 3rd turn we'll curve into, you know, a 1-drop and a 2-drop, or a 2-drop and save it up for God's willing or something like that. So definitely other things we want to do on the 3rd turn. That's why we're only playing the 3/3-drops. I'll explain why we're not playing Permanent Captain towards the end of the video. Don't worry about that. But Brimaz is obviously one of the strongest creatures in the deck, if not the entire format, so play him. And to finish up the creatures here, 3 copies of Kytheon's Irregulars. This card is bonkers, honestly. We're not playing anything higher on the curve than this in the creatures, at least. And this is, like I said, it's crazy. It helps us get our dudes through for combat damage, not just combat damage, but renown, which is pretty important. Once it becomes, you know, 5 power, which it facilitates its own renown, that's cool too. Once it becomes 5 power, you've got a very efficient creature on your hands that also helps out your entire team, just like Lieutenant does. So really like the creature. Didn't want to play in a whole 4 of or anything, but it's really good to see, especially on curve. It's a fantastic card. On the spells, we're playing 16 of those. We've got 3 copies of God's Willing to start that off. Helps your Kytheon survive if you don't have the mana, say, to make him indestructible. That's pretty important. And helps your Kytheon get through for combat damage, or anything really. And saves your dudes from spot removal. I mean, we want to play this card. The Scry is very, very good too. So I do want to play this card. I was struggling with whether or not to just make this a Vryn Wingmare sort of thing. We're just playing nothing but creatures. But in the end, I again decided that I wanted to play spells because the white spells are really, really good for the white aggro decks. God's Willing is a perfect example of that, so I want to play this card. We're playing 3 copies of Raise the Alarm, not just to help Kytheon, but also because, you know, we're playing something else that helps us because we have tribal soldiers, so we want to put as many of those out as possible. Helps us get a little more value out of Consul's Lieutenant, you know, that's cool. So, want to play Raise the Alarm. I really don't see any reason not to. 3 copies of a very important card. This is Celestial Flare, and we need it to beat decks, especially that use Storm Breath Dragon, and Ojutai and, say, Silumgar can also be especially horrible for us. Celestial Flare is just an incredible card for us. We have to have it to control some of the things in the format, especially Storm Breath, that really, really hurt us. We gotta have it. We're playing 1 copy of Swift Reckoning, which is the only reason we're not playing 4 Celestial Flare. I did want to find a slot for this somewhere in the deck to see if it works, and in testing it has worked. Even as a sorcery, it's really not a terrible card. It's basically a strictly better Assassinate, you know, just a different color. Do like it when Spell Mastery is turned on, obviously. I mean, you can get Ojutai with this is one thing. But this, I mean, 2 mana instant speed removal after Spell Mastery is pretty good. And honestly, 2 mana sorcery speed, you know, almost unconditional removal, you know, destroy any aggressive creature, more or less. Pretty good, and helps you when you're behind, because mostly you'll be casting this when they feel free swinging in with one of their biggest dudes. So I'm actually not, you know, too down on this card. I wanted to see how well it worked, and it turns out it does work fairly well. I was thinking about making it 2 Flares, 2 Reckonings, but in the end we really, really need Celestial Flare too much, and I don't want to board too many copies of it because we see these problem creatures that we can take care of with Flare all the time. So I think this is the right ratio. We're also playing 1 Banishing Light in the main deck here. We've got to get rid of threats unconditionally, except for Storm Breath. Always a problem for us. But this is really good. I'd like to play 2 copies, but I just really can't find the space for 2 copies of Light in the main deck. But we do at least need a copy of it to help us. It's always a good top deck. Help us take out, you know, larger threats or things we can't otherwise deal with. So, gotta at least have the 1 copy. I would like to play more, but it's kind of tough. 1 copy of Spear of Heliod in this deck. Only the 1 copy because we are playing more copies of something else that does sort of what Spear does. Also, it's legendary. I don't want to draw into too many dead copies of this. It does help us out tremendously, though. It is another form of removal, which we need all we can get. So, and sort of, they don't want to attack into us at all. So not, you know, I really, really like Spear, but I don't want to play extra copies of them or anything. It's really good when we do draw into them. Here's the other thing that's sort of like Spear that we're playing. We're playing 3 copies of Obelisk of Urd. Definitely a very good card for us. We can convoke into this quite often, or a lot of times at the very top of our curve, we don't necessarily have to. We just play it, drop it, attack with our dudes who can Alpha Strike that turn. With Convoke, there are ways that, you know, you convoke this out, tap a couple of dudes down with Kytheon's Irregulars, and then just go to town, you know, with your huge dudes. So definitely a very, very good card for us. Helps us go over the top of mid-range decks, and one of our, you know, a couple of our dudes have extra ability. I mean, Vigilance and First Strike are very good abilities to have when your creatures are huge. So I do want to play at least this. The only thing that really tribally helps us out for playing soldiers, so another reason I want to play it. I think it's a very good card. And finally, 1 copy of Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Yeah, those tokens are soldiers. That helps with Obelisk of Urd. Those tokens are just 3 creatures, which helps us out with Consul's Lieutenant. I mean, Spear of Heliod, freaking a lot of things that we're playing. Kytheon helps us swing with dudes after we top deck Kytheon late game. So, big fan. Also, that second ability only really hits Irregulars and can hit our own Gideon, but I mean, we're not going to be dumb enough to let that happen. So, there's that. But in any case, really helps us out against the mid-range decks that are everywhere, that just play these huge dudes, you know, and also against control decks that play huge dudes, because those are everywhere right now. So do really like Elspeth at the very top of our curve here, and we're only playing the 1 because 6 mana is a lot to hard cast. Here's the really weird looking lands, but it's going to make sense. I did want to play the 1 copy of Rogue's Passage because we're playing a lot of dudes with Renown, and I think that helps a lot. Also, Consul's Lieutenant helps it survive the attack step and still give our dudes the bonus and activate his own Renown the first time he swings in. So I do like the 1 copy of Rogue's Passage. As far as the 1 copy of Nykthos, I want to play at least the 1. Imagine, you know, tapping their whole board with Kytheon's Regulars without having to, like, tap very many planes. That's pretty cool. Also helps us play Elspeth and still do other things like Swift Reckoning during combat step, things like that. So I do want to play at least the one copy of Nykthos, but again, don't want too many dead copies of Nykthos in my hand. Let's go ahead and let those lands make sense for a second here. By putting up the board. The board, you'll see those Dromoka's commands in there, really helps us out against red aggro, which we are okay against, but I think it's going to be a very important deck, so I want to have as many safeguards against that as possible. So I think the board is fairly open. I want to slightly talk about just for a little bit, talk about some things I didn't play here before I give you the power rankings. First of all, I almost played main deck Archangel of Tithes, put that in the board. I almost played Preeminent Captain, I alluded to that earlier. Captain is just very slow. It's got to be out for an entire turn before it really does anything for us. Doesn't surprise anybody once it does swing in because, they're expecting you to play a soldier off of it. Very often this won't get around to swinging at all. They will shock this, which again, it dies to Wild Slash, just almost any removal in the format will kill it. Preeminent Captain, it feels really slow, and I don't want to play that many 3-drops to begin with, and Brimaz is just, we can all agree Brimaz is a better card. So I just don't think that Preeminent Captain quite makes the cut in this deck. Also, I wanted to play Glimpse of the Sun God, maybe just one copy on the board. Ended up not doing that. Didn't feel quite powerful enough, especially since it is a redundant effect with Kytheon's Irregulars, but maybe not the kind like we want. I already mentioned Vryn Wingmare, wanted to make that a thing, but that might be better after rotation when we lose God's Willing and Obelisk and maybe Banishing Light, Elspeth, so that might be better after the format. I wanted to play Launch the Fleets, one of the last cards that I cut, just didn't find space for it. Wanted to at least play one copy, but did not. Let me know how you feel about that. And finally, I wanted to include Kinsbale Skirmisher. I actually like this as a 2-drop, and it's even good as a top deck because it will always do something as soon as it hits the board. If it resolves, it's going to do something. So at least there's that. And second turn, it can help your dudes, swing for 3, whatever. So it's not the worst card ever, but it just really wasn't quite good enough to make the cut. Let me know if that is at all a thing, or if I did the right thing there, because I think I did. And here are the power rankings. Let's discuss these for just a second before we move on here, before we go out. I feel like the deck is fairly powerful as far as the power ranking itself goes. We are playing Gideon, one of the most important cards in the format, along with a few other things. Brimaz is really good. Banishing Light, Elspeth, Celestial Flare, everyone's talking about. So the speed of the deck is fairly, right on par with a lot of other aggro decks. Not as fast as Goblins, right there with Elves. The synergy of the deck, 6 doesn't look like much, but in a way it's the good kind of bad synergy, where the deck doesn't rely on gimmicky things that absolutely have to happen in order to win you the game, but a lot of added on value between the cards. So it is fairly synergetic, but it doesn't rely on its synergies. It is sort of versatile in that this is another deck that's very good against other aggro decks. It makes me wonder if Goblins is really going to be as much of a thing as we think it's going to be. Although I still love Goblins. But in any case, the deck also does fairly bad against control, like the other aggro decks do that we've tested at least. Its resiliency is probably its lowest stat, just because if we get swept or anything like that, we are in trouble. I didn't include a Johnny's Presence or anything like that because we already have Gideon, and I think Languish will be an important card, which diminishes the importance of things like a Johnny's Presence. As far as the offense goes, we are very offensively minded, not so defensive. We are playing things like removal, and we do have creatures with First Strike that help us on defense, but as far as our total philosophy, we are very offense-minded. Game 1 we do very well because we are a fast deck, all things considered. If I could give the speed a 7.5, I would give it a 7.5, but I don't do half the points, but it would be there if I did. Board after board, especially against control and mid-range decks, we falter a little bit, we fall slightly, although our board is very good, especially against, again, other aggro decks. Our consistency is very high. Again, if I could award half a points, I'd give it an 8.5 here, because we are very consistent. We always do something, although the deck loses a little bit of a point there in consistency because we could be playing more 1-drops. There are times we don't get a 1-drop, and that can often really hurt us in the sort of initiative race, especially against other aggro, and even mid-range decks that are establishing presence as early as turn 2 or 3. So that's a thing too. Overall, I do really think the deck is very good and poised to be a good deck, but probably a sort of high second tier deck. I don't think that it's much better than Control or even a lot of the mid-range decks that are sort of dominating the format. Abzan, Green White Megamorph is a thing. So the deck has its problems and it has its, things that it's really, really good against. It did impress me a few times and I do like the deck. A lot of fun to play and feels very, very strong. As far as, playing against other aggro, and when you actually get to do tricks like tapping down their whole team with Kytheon's Irregulars and a Nykthos, or just, natural Kytheon's Irregulars, tap down a few dudes and swing in. Because even if you're just tapping down one or two guys, it's really good. You're tapping down their best guys. So I do overall really, really like the deck. It is as good as I wanted it to be. Didn't want it to be a blowout deck or anything, although I used to be exclusively a white aggro player for like a year and a half there. So I'm glad that it's back, and I think it is back. I think Soldiers probably is a thing in this format. We'll have to wait and see how good it is. Craig Wesco, let us know. But also, Wizards, you let us know. And if you like the content, remember to do the things. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Always interested in what you have to say. Sharing our videos helps so much, and liking just makes us feel better. So please do all the things. Our next deck tech, we did have a suggestion for blue-white flyers. I really, really like that idea, and I still want to do mono-black aggro a lot. So between those two things, let me know what you like more, and I'll get that done next. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.